Start.
Remember to record.
Just pushed it.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you've been able to take the time out of a snowy, blustery night in order to listen in and participate in our third District A12 Global Membership Team webinar, and tonight's webinar is on Project Refresh. I'm so happy to have Dave Durant, past District Governor Dave, from the Global Membership Team. He's the membership specialist tonight, and he and I will be presenting the webinar this evening. I'd like to welcome all the attendees on the call from outside our district. I see District Governor Barb Tuxford on the call, along with Catherine Reed and Micheline Lush and Shelley Gauthier, Vice Governor Shelley from A4 are also on the call from outside District A12. We're always welcome them along to come in and participate, and we thank them for taking the time as well. So let's get started quickly by a quick review of the webinar sort of panels that you will see during the webinar. Firstly, the right side will be your control panel, and if you here's a little closer view. The top part is the audio, and in the bottom is where you can key in questions for the staff. On the call manning the chat box is the District A12 IT person, Tim Holmes. And that little red arrow at the top, if your control pane disappears, you can simply just push that red button and restore it back out. You can also click under the options and, the view tab at the top of your control panel, and unselect auto hide the control panel, which will keep it up front for you. If you want to raise your hand, just simply click the raise your hand button, and Tim will at the right opportunity unmute you, and you can use your microphone and headset to ask any questions or participate in any of the interaction during the webinar. So let's get started. Tonight's webinar, we're going to cover four things. We're going to cover a comprehensive survey that was done of Lions all across North America a couple of years back. And we're going to talk about some of the results of the surveys that we did with non-members. And then we're also going to look at some of the results of the surveys that we did with former members, people who used to be Lions but have then left our organizations for all sorts of reasons. We will look at some of the highlights from that survey, and then we're going to look at what we can learn from both of these surveys and what we should do next. So I'm going to turn it over to past District Governor Dave, and he's going to lead off with the first couple of pieces. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Let me just get organized here, because I didn't think I was coming into slide 8, so not a problem. Okay, this was a very large and a comprehensive survey that had several phases, and LCI gave 11 years worth of membership and club data to a research company for very detailed statistical analyses. And at the same time, LCI conducted an online survey with many Lions, and the response was amazing. There was more than 7,800 Lions from 134 countries that responded. And they received over 2,000 responses from Lions here in North America. In the third phase, LCI matched the findings from the first two phases, and this was the first time they were able to match a member survey with membership data, and by doing so we could better understand what kind of member experiences are associated with either membership growth or decline. In the fourth phase, LCI surveyed former Lions to understand the experiences that they had as Lions. And this was conducted in English with Lions who resigned from their clubs during the past 5 years. They also surveyed non-Lions about their view towards volunteering. And then with a series of online focus groups with members from what you will find out later are gold clubs. These are clubs where member satisfaction is high. And they did several online focus groups. And then finally, in order to assist the work of the men and women and family membership development task force, we looked into what women members were saying in the surveys. So why did we do this study? Why did LCI spend all this money to do the study? Well, this chart pretty well says it all. This chart shows the total district membership for the past 10 years. And unfortunately, it is typical of Lions membership in North America. We're losing members, and something has to be done about it. If your bank account was decreasing at this rate every year, you would, hopefully, do something about your spending. LCI knew they had no choice but to do this comprehensive membership study. Let's look at some other facts. These charts show the percentage of clubs that have had a loss in membership, stayed the same, or had a net increase. As you will note, more than half the clubs did not increase their membership. It appears too many clubs have lost their vitality, their energy, their desire, their ability to grow. And as I mentioned, they are losing their ability to serve. This research project will help us understand why some clubs are growing where others are shrinking. What are the predictors of successful clubs? What does an ideal club look like? Let's look at some of our club traditions and what do the successful clubs do to manage their clubs. So let's start with this non-member survey. In addition to looking at current and former Lions, the research company questioned over 2,000 people from the general population to get some idea of what they think of us. And there were some interesting facts. First of all, they asked the general public about their attitude towards volunteering. And as you can see on the left, they found that nearly 2 out of 5 adults, or 38% of the people they talked to, were very interested in volunteering to serve their community. Now this was basically in the States, so I checked in the Volunteer Canada website, and it indicates that in Canada about 44% of Canadians volunteer their time. And that confirms information that I've heard before, that in general Canadians volunteer more than Americans do. So something that we should have as a plus on our side, that it should be easier to get people into Lions clubs. The other important finding from this part of the research was that of those people that were interested in volunteering, more than half, 58%, as you see on the chart on the right, were women. 58% of the people interested in volunteering were women. However, I don't know about the other districts, but I know here in A12, we have about twice as many men as we do women. 32% of our membership in A12 are females, and 68% are male. The takeaway idea here is certainly that we are missing out on a lot of potential Lions in A12, and we're going to have to look at why we're not attracting more women members. The general public was asked if they knew of any of these service clubs: Lions, Rotary, Kiwanis, Knights, Masons, Elks, Optimists. And these are the results. And much to our delight, Lions clubs came out on top. More people were aware of Lions clubs than they were of other service clubs. So I guess we're not necessarily the best kept secret in town. Or, maybe we're just the best known, best kept secret in town. We still have to keep our name in front of the general public. And what an opportunity we have with our centennial quickly approaching. We're going to be whipping through slides pretty quickly here with a lot of information on it, and but it'll be the ideas and takeaway that you will get from the survey that's important. One of the questions they asked of the non-Lions was, how well do each of the following statements describe a Lions Club? Provide valuable service that directly helps others. Ensure 61% knew that. Ensure that the activity that we're doing helps local community. Raise significant funds for charitable purposes. So most of the people out there knew what Lions Clubs do. But look on the bottom one. Less than half of the people realize that we actually help people outside of our local community. So I guess the note we should make to ourselves here is to let's make sure we get some local PR when we provide assistance, but both locally and when we provide assistance outside of our local community. The non-Lions were asked, how much do you think you'd appreciate each of the following unique aspects of a Lions Club? Exchanging pins, wearing a signature piece of clothing such as the yellow vest, wearing Lions fashion, a jacket, an emblem, a golf shirt, beginning each meeting with a Lions cheer or a Lions roar, and Chris's favorite, what do you think the public would think about singing from the World War I Lions songbook? And the results were not too surprising to some of us, but they were certainly a surprise to a lot of people. And that is, very few of the people think that trading pins, singing, wearing clothing is important. The people want to volunteer, and in their mind, the first thing they want to do is do service, not the extra things that we do. So we should be careful in determining when and how we expose non-members to our unique practices, and perhaps take a second look at some of these. And Chris will be addressing this a little bit later in the webinar. So non-Lions were interested in volunteering. And they all agree that providing service directly to others in our local community and offering opportunities for both men and women are important. And most of the group that were interested in volunteering, that's really what they wanted to do. Networking, you can see, was only a significant interest to 9% of the group. And networking, of course, is meeting others, getting leadership experience, and of course helping with their career or their business. Family. Some people felt that it's important that family be involved in the activities or volunteering activities that they do. It's about the same number felt that we should help people beyond our local community. But there's also 5% of the group that really wanted to focus on their community. And they wanted to have an issue in their community and focus on that and really not spend any time doing other things. Quite a few wanted it to be casual, not a formal, structured membership type of arrangement that they have with their volunteering. The bottom line here, of course, is that we are all different. And Lionism will not appeal to 100% of the people out there who want to volunteer. But we do provide the opportunity for both men and women to directly help others in our local community, and that's what 62% of the people want. We also provide opportunities for the other items listed on that slide. So that was the highlights of the non-Lion survey. As Chris mentioned at the introduction, we also talked to former Lions. More than 1,500 former members who resigned in the previous 5 years were surveyed. And we'll start looking at satisfaction. When members leave, I wonder what they feel about us. The question was, in general, how would you describe your overall experience with Lions clubs? Now remember, these are people that left the club, left Lionism in the previous 5 years. The big insight here is that 53% had a very positive experience of being a Lion. 28% had a slightly positive experience at being a Lion. So the vast majority, 81% of the people, had a very positive experience when they were a member of a Lions club. There were some that left with a negative, slightly negative, or 8% very negative. So in a total, about 19% of the former North American Lions that responded had a negative feeling towards Lionism. Some Lions leave our organization without any apparent reason, and some leave because of lifestyle changes. A new job, moving, getting married, children becoming more demanding with their activities. So the question that was asked was, how well do the following reasons describe why you were no longer a Lion? 8% had no issue, they just quit. 17 were lifestyle changes only, and that was it. But 47% had lifestyle changes but had some issue with their club. And you'll see 28% had some issue with their club. So 75% of the people that left did have an issue with their club. And they wanted things changed. And maybe they'd still be a Lion if we had changed. So the next logical step, the next logical question for the survey was, well, why did you leave? And the question was, how well do the following reasons describe why you were no longer a Lion? And interesting, the main reason was not enough younger members. And this has two parts to it. One, the young members in our clubs don't feel comfortable because there aren't many other young people their age in the club. And the other reason is that a lot of us are getting long in the tooth and we don't have the energy we used to have. So we do need younger members in the club to carry out some of these physically demanding projects that we undertake. 41% of them said the meetings were unproductive. 33%, the meetings were not enjoyable. About the same number felt that they just did not belong to the club. And I think that's a very important one that we have to really, really look at. All of us that are listening to here tonight, make sure that every Lion in our clubs feel that they belong to that club. Of course, there's going to be politics, and this was an issue. A third of them roughly felt the club was too political. So they were the top 5 reasons, but there were more. Let's look at the next 5 reasons why people left. Lionism is too old-fashioned and stodgy. I liked the club, but there were personal lifestyle changes. Not enough focus on helping members of the community. Not enough service. That in many cases is what it is. A lot of clubs just do fundraising and then write a check, as we know. Not the type of service for the community that interested me. And leadership in my club changed, and I didn't like the change. Some of those reasons, some of those top 10 reasons came as a surprise to me when I first went through this survey. And I'm sure they're probably a surprise to a lot of you. Service was a major source of dissatisfaction, poor service. And remember, we had people that left purely because of lifestyle change and others that had issue with the club. So the results here, that may be a little bit confusing if it's the first time you've seen them, but they've took the answers that came from the people that just had lifestyle changes, and they took the answers that came from those that had an issue with their lions. Provide a valuable service that directly help others. And most of the people that left because of lifestyle change felt that we do. Where only half of the people that had issues felt that we do. Ensure that the activity helps the local community. Again, quite a gap. Raise significant funds for various charitable projects. Again, quite a gap between those who left with just a lifestyle change and those with issues. Encourage members to take a leadership role at some point. Again, quite a gap. So service is important. They looked at the club culture. Very welcoming and makes me feel as though I belong. And lifestyle change, Lions said, oh yeah. But those with issues, well, a lot of them left because that was a really serious issue. There's a huge gap there. We offer opportunities for men and women to participate. Provide opportunities to socialize with other members. Welcome diversity in our membership. Embrace technology wherever possible. Our members are all very similar to one another. And there are many cliques that I do not feel part of. A lot of these words you have heard before when we've been talking about membership. But it's interesting to see how people that were former Lions, how they reacted to these questions and their responses. Huge gaps in some cases, and in the bottom one, those with lifestyle, it wasn't a big deal, but those with issues, it is. So we have service is important, and we have club culture is important. We're going to have to be aware of a lot of these things if we're going to make any changes to our organization. Chris, I think it's your turn.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Yeah, some really intense, geeky stats telling you and talking a lot about how our members really feel about our organization when they leave, or about the people that aren't Lions, how they feel about our organization. So, now we want to talk a little bit about some of the other survey results and how they really tell us about our clubs and the way our clubs operate. This chart tells us, along the bottom, gives us the size of the club, and then the statistics of which of those clubs will be likely to be active within the next 10 years. Obviously, when a club is larger, the more likely it is for them to continue to serve their community. But once a club gets pretty small, down below 15 members or so, those clubs are much less likely to survive. When a club is 15 members or less, there's only about a 50-50 chance that that club will be here 10 years later. And then once a club goes below 10 members, it's extremely difficult for them to survive. Almost 2 out of 3 clubs fail within 10 years when they reach 10 members or less. The larger the club, the better the chance of survival. So, what is the club size of the clubs within our district? Make sure you compare it to the chart at the top of the screen. In District A12, 16 of our clubs have 26 or more members. And from the chart, we know that those 16 clubs with more than 26 members are considered pretty safe. 83% of clubs will survive 10 years if they have 26 or more members. But 7 clubs have 21 to 25, 11 clubs have 16 to 20, and 10 have 11 to 15, and there are 2 clubs that have 1 to 10 members. And we need to be very concerned about those clubs that are below 15 members because, as we know in the previous slide, it's a roughly 50-50 chance for those clubs to survive 10 years down the road. So in about 10 years, if we follow what has happened over the last decade and we do not start many new clubs, this is what the district will look like in 10 years. We will lose 1 or maybe even both of the 2 clubs that we have that have less than 10 members. We will lose half of the 10 to 15 member clubs. 4 of the 16 to 20 member clubs will close. 2 of the 21 to 25 member clubs will disappear, and 3 of our largest clubs will disappear. Currently, we have 46 clubs in our district, and we will be down to 30. So, what is the solution? Should be pretty obvious. We have to get smaller clubs to become larger, and 2, we have to start new clubs. So let's take a look at some of the new clubs. Some of the statistics from this survey revealed a very surprising fact, and it says that size matters. The size of a new club is critical. The numbers you see in the blue circles are the percentages of new clubs that are chartered at that size during the 11-year or so period that the research data was used. We can see that nearly half of the clubs, or 48%, chartered in the past 10 years started with 25 or less members. We also see that the survival rate of a new club that has 25 or less members is terribly low. When you start a club with 25 or less members, about 4 out of 10 do not last 10 years. There's a minimum charter size before we can start a new club of 20 members, and we don't really need to change that because there's still a 60% chance that they'll survive with 20 members. But we should do everything we can to start new clubs with more than 25 members so that they have a much better chance of surviving. If we can get those clubs starting off with 25, 26, 30, 35 members, they are much more likely to survive 10 years, 20 years down the road. And a lot of that comes from ongoing leadership because there's a bigger pool to choose from. So let's talk about women. Dave mentioned that women have a much higher percentage of volunteerism within Canada than males. So we have welcomed women into our clubs for more than 25 years. So what are we doing about it at the club level? From our membership data, we have significantly improved the number of women in our clubs. We don't have any clubs in our District A12 that are all female clubs, but a positive thing is that 6 of our clubs, or 13%, have more women than men. But on the other hand, 6 of our clubs have no female members at all. And I think they're losing out on a big opportunity to grow and strengthen their club by not reaching out to females and involving them and asking them to serve alongside them. So one of the survey questions that were asked of our current members is, why did you join Lions? And the results were not surprising. I think we all pretty much joined for many of these reasons, but the top 2 reasons were to serve the community where I live at 86%, and to participate in a specific service or cause, 57%. There were all sorts of other reasons. People wanted the social aspects of being with friends and leadership development and volunteering and serving with their family, networking and a whole bunch of different reasons. But it's interesting to note that most people who join Lions join in order to serve and help other people. Very few people join Lions to be recognized and to get awards or recognition. Most join simply because of service. The Global Membership Team has another webinar coming up in April, and it's all focused about service, and in particular, the Lions Day of Service. So I would encourage you, when the registration link come out, to really consider participating in that webinar as well. The other thing we did with this survey was we classified clubs into 2 areas based on membership growth and satisfaction. And some of you may have participated in How Are Your Ratings member questionnaires as part of the Club Quality Initiative or the former Club Excellence process. The vertical axis represents the club membership ranging from shrinking to growing. For growing, we used our club classification system we explained earlier. Clubs are either stable, meaning that they're either growing or just declining by a very small amount, about 10%. And the horizontal axis represents member satisfaction ranging from low to high. And we assess satisfaction across a broad array of ways that they describe their experience as a Lion. So when you completed your How Are Your Ratings questions, you may recognize some of the questions that the survey asked. To measure satisfaction, we asked, is being a Lion something that I really enjoy? Does it give me a sense of pride? Does it give me a real sense of accomplishment in the service that we do in our communities? Does it make me feel as though I'm doing something positive to help others? I would not hesitate to recommend that friends or family join my Lions Club. Lions has become an important part of my life. I am respected by other people in my club, and I plan to continue being an active member of my Lions Club for the foreseeable future, and I'm very satisfied by the rewards that I receive for my investment of time and money. Those 9 questions were the basic measurements that we use for satisfaction. And I think it's pretty obvious that if all our Lions could say yes to those 9 questions, our clubs would be strong, our members would be engaged, and they would be committed, and they would be having a great membership service experience. So then we looked at clubs that had high or stable membership growth and high satisfaction, and we called those gold clubs. Blue clubs were the remainder of the clubs, and a club may have high growth in membership, but its members may not be satisfied. It's considered a blue club, or vice versa. Gold clubs are clubs that are highly satisfied members who are growing or stable in membership. So about 1/4 of the clubs in North America are considered gold clubs, and the other 75% or so are considered blue clubs. Initially, we thought maybe some of the blue clubs were clubs where members were older, or they were perhaps all male, but had no females within the club. But when we looked at all the clubs, we found that there were virtually no differences. There were lots of gold clubs that were all men, but there were also blue clubs that were all men. There wasn't a big difference. Gender, age of members, marital status, all that stuff really didn't have a bearing on if a club was blue or gold. But what we discovered, the differences were between whether a club is a gold club or a blue club, was how the club is run. How the club is run, how it operates. Is it led effectively? Are the members involved and engaged in developing the club and moving the club forward? The other obvious difference that we found from clubs that were gold versus blue were clubs that had a high level of service experience. They participated in great service projects, the members were engaged in those service projects, and that the experience and happiness and satisfaction the members were having were high. We also discovered that the atmosphere within the club had a huge impact. In fact, probably a bigger impact than everything else within the club. So the club culture that Dave already has spoken about is huge in making clubs a stronger club. So why is it important to be a gold club and not a blue club? The difference between gold and blue clubs is certainly size. The average club in North America has about 26 members, but in District A12 we have about 23 members. But there's a difference between the gold and blue clubs. The average gold club actually has 34 members, and blue clubs, the average is 23. And that might be pretty obvious too. Members who are engaged and satisfied within their clubs are going to be more likely to stay in the clubs, and those clubs will tend to stay larger. Members who are not as satisfied or have dissatisfaction in the operation of their club tend to leave the revolving door, and those clubs tend to be a little bit smaller. But when we look at the chart by distribution of club size, the differences become very clear. There are very few gold clubs that have less than 20 members, but almost 30% of the blue clubs have less than 20 members. But on the other hand, larger clubs 30% of gold clubs have more than 60 members. So the larger the club, the more likely they are gold. In the 11-year period that was studied, gold clubs grew by 61% on their membership growth, but blue clubs shrank by 36%. So let's look at the previous slide. 3 out of 4 clubs are challenged in some way in North America, either because their membership levels are shrinking or because their members are dissatisfied. But on the other hand, a little over 1/4 of all clubs are gold clubs with stable or growing membership levels and satisfied members. In the previous slide, we talked about 61% of gold clubs had 61% membership growth over the previous 11 years or so, whereas blue clubs declined by 36%. That really goes to show you that clubs that really adapt and change their operation to become attractive to new members and also relevant to the members they have in their club are much more likely to grow and continue on in service. But clubs which have a reluctance to change and do not listen to our members and do not get involved in making sure our members are satisfied will tend to decline. Clubs were also classified into 3 basic clubs. The first one is family club, and a family-focused club generally involves families of members. They volunteer the most and contribute a significant part of their income. And they describe family-focused clubs describe their club as being very active and they provide valuable things within their community. They foster an environment of inclusiveness. They really focus on respect and belonging within the club. But they also have fun. They socialize. They have a camaraderie amongst themselves that really allows them to serve their communities well. And family-focused clubs tend to be very knowledgeable about Lionism, and they've taken advantage of the support and training that is offered to them. A second type of club that the surveys discovered were social clubs. And social clubs are more focused on the social aspects of volunteering. They have regular meetings for the purpose of socializing, but they also, while they're socializing, they're planning upcoming events. And their goal is to make members feel welcome, provide an opportunity to keep busy and do things socially, and they incorporate a sense of fun into the service activities. And the third broad type of club that the survey discovered were philanthropic clubs. And the main focus of these clubs are to raise significant funds for projects. And they're very focused on service, and they devote a lot more time to non-Lion volunteering than any other group. They tend to be less social. They probably are a little more structured and a little more rigid, but they do a lot of great things for the community. The important thing to remember is that clubs are divided into these 3 broad groups, and there's nothing wrong with any of those clubs. It's what's important to them and the culture and the attitudes and the atmosphere within the club. So gold clubs are generally family clubs, social clubs, or philanthropic clubs. Blue clubs, on the other hand, have a profile and they haven't quite figured out what type of club they are. But we do know what they want. They want openness, they want support, and they want gender balance. So let's talk a little bit about clubs where members are unhappy about the lack of transparency and openness. When a club wants openness, they want it that club funds are used properly. They want to make sure that they're getting regular financial reports and that the money that they've raised and taken from the community and collected from the community is being used effectively. They also want to know that elections are run fairly and that it's not the same president year after year after year within the club. Members in blue clubs that really strive for openness generally don't feel they have any influence in their club. And they don't feel that they're getting bang for their buck and their time investment. They're not satisfied that what they're doing is worthwhile. So we looked at what gold clubs do in order to foster openness. in the two broad areas of elections and governance. Gold clubs really, using focus groups, discovered that most successful gold clubs are ones where they have a process in place for effective elections. Nominations can be made, positions are open to everybody, and it's not that secretary for life kind of attitude. They also provided advance notice, they had formal ballots, and that the results were open and transparent. We also asked Gold Club members how they provided good governance within their clubs. In the area of finance, they had monthly financial reports, they had statements and books available, they had audits done from outside the club, and they had multiple signing authority on all accounts. They had no closed meetings. All the key decisions were made via club vote, and they ensured that officers were changed on a yearly basis. Because our goal as leaders in our clubs are to build and grow our clubs, make them stronger, and move them towards gold. So when we look at our clubs and opportunities we have, we need to look at elections and the financial operations of our clubs and encouraging that those are occurring on a regular basis. Blue clubs will also want more support. They obviously want more members. Generally speaking, many blue clubs have a very low desire for gender balance. If 50% of our population are women and a greater majority of our people that want to volunteer are women, blue clubs generally like the status quo. They don't have a desire to reach out and attract women. They would like to be empowered to help turn around the situation in their club. And in a rank ordered sense, they wish they were more knowledgeable. They'd like to have a mentoring process, and they'd like more help from the district leadership, providing inspiration and support. So about 1 out of 5 clubs worldwide fit into this type. They have a strong desire for more members, but they don't think there's a problem with what's currently going on. So again, we went to those gold club members and we asked them, how do you find support? So first is a club that feels very independent. And I think our district, along with many other districts around our multiple district, have clubs in there that are very independent. They're very successful and they don't feel like they need the support of the district team or anything LCI has to offer. They're independently minded and they can fix and work on their problems on their own. And they have very knowledgeable people within their club. But most of the clubs fit in the other group. And these clubs take advantage of the resources outside their club. And they can be even subdivided into clubs that have very experienced or knowledgeable members among them who can serve as internal resources and those that go outside. And here are the characteristics of clubs in which members want more gender balance. Balance is not about numbers, it's more about involvement and opportunity for leadership. Usually the smallest clubs have the lowest ratio of women to men. They would generally like more women to be involved and wish their club would allow more women to serve leadership roles. And then interestingly, the survey respondents were also slightly more male. So again, we went back to those gold clubs and we asked them, what can they do, or what do they do about increasing gender balance? And we learned that there are clubs where the roles are balanced and those where women are still limited or not accepted. Even some gold clubs were like that too. And this is the attitude shift. The most successful clubs are ones that truly value women within the clubs, and they believe that women bring unique perspectives, a strong work ethic, and they make the club more appealing and likely to grow. The hardest part is those clubs where women are accepted, but they're not fully valued. And that changing that attitude is probably one of the most challenging things we can do. So there are parts of the surveys that we talked about where we asked a little bit about club meetings and what was important about club meetings and the satisfaction of our members. What we found was that clubs are meeting more frequently than members prefer. 84% of our clubs actually meet more than once a month, but only 70% of our members want that. So we have a bit of a disconnect with the way we meet in our clubs. Many of our members, 70% of our members, are telling us they only want once a month or maybe even less than once a month for club meetings. But almost all our clubs, and especially here in District A12, have have more than one meeting a month. We also looked a little bit at the day that we meet. Most of our clubs meet on weeknights. Some people prefer weekday mornings. And for the most part, we're satisfying the needs of our members in our meeting days. But then there's meals. The majority of clubs have a meal, 88% of them. But again, only 70% of our members prefer that they have a meal at their Lions meetings. So again, we have a little bit of a disconnect, and this can actually be making a difference on whether our club members are satisfied and staying engaged. So one of the questions we had going into the research was the role of some of the rituals and customs that are unique to Lionism. And here are 4 in particular: wearing the Lion vest, exchanging pins, Lions cheer, and Lions song. Let's start off with the vest. The percent in gray boxes are the club or members that do not practice the custom. The red boxes are members who practice it but do not consider the custom to be particularly important. Finally, the figures in the green boxes are those who practice it and consider the custom to be important to them. So looking at vests, we find that 12% of our clubs, or 12% of our members, don't even wear a vest at all. 55% of our clubs practice it, and our members practice it, but don't consider it to be the least bit important. And only 33% of our members feel that a vest is an important tradition that must be maintained. Exchanging pins. 17% not practiced, 65% practice it but don't think it's important, and only 18% think it's important. Cheers and roars. 50% don't think it's important. In the Lions songbook, 53% don't think it's important, only 17% think it is. And we looked at whether there were any significant differences between gold and blue clubs in both the practice and feelings towards these, but we didn't find any differences. But what it really shows is that successful clubs are ones that are relevant and are looking at the practices and traditions that we have in our clubs and changing and adapting and lessening the importance on some of those traditions in order to still move forward in serving our communities. So our unique customs and rituals are beginning to lose relevance with many of our members and potentially some of our non-members as well. So let's recap some of the things that we learned and what those lessons mean to our teams. Size matters. We knew that all along, but we confirmed during the surveys that the size of a club matters, and through this study, we confirmed what those critical thresholds are. And we know that's, at least 15 members or more, and bigger the better. We learned that there were three segments of successful clubs that show high member satisfaction and also good membership growth. All three clubs were very different, but they all served their community in their own way. Family clubs, social, and philanthropic clubs. We also learned that there were three segments of challenge clubs or blue clubs. And they really indexed low in the quality of service experience, and that those clubs can be categorized by what their frustrations are within their clubs. Those clubs want openness, they want support, and they want gender balance. Our unique rituals and customs are beginning to lose some relevance. And we often hear debates about whether our unique rituals have a future or not. The study showed that the acceptance of the practices are high as a large majority of the clubs are practicing them. But it does tell us that only a small group of Lions today consider them to be important. The non-Lion survey showed there's a huge potential for growth. There are a lot of non-Lions out there who are interested in volunteering. Dave talked about the stats here in Canada from the Volunteer Canada website. And several of those segments are a good fit with Lions. We are highly recognized worldwide for the service work that we do, and people do want to be a part of it. Women and families are key to our future success. That should be obvious. When roughly 30% of our Lions in District A12 are women, but over 50% of the population are women, should be a pretty good takeaway that women are the key to our future growth. The study also showed the majority of those interested in volunteering are women. And there's a strong interest in volunteering that includes family members. Unfortunately, one of the gold club types is one that welcomes families into club activities. But also the biggest area in which even our most successful gold clubs have and our blue clubs is under-delivering on the member expectation in involving children and families. Some of our clubs and many of our clubs are reluctant to involve families within our service experience. And then finally, we discovered there's a large gap in age profile between current clubs and their communities. The age distribution within communities is different, and this is a big opportunity and a challenge for all of us. So what should we do next? And the specific things that you can do as club leaders and GMT and GLT members. So we learned the club size matters, and we're not going to change the size of clubs initially that they start, but we should really look at the data seriously. We want to start clubs with at least 25 members or more. Second, without being sensitive to the member experience, the way that they feel about their service time as a Lion, we're not going to move the needle on membership growth and strength within our clubs and get more gold clubs. Because satisfied members is the future of our organization. Being a Lion is an experience, and encourage clubs to assess their own members' experience. Utilize tools such as How Are Your Ratings that can be used to do a self-assessment and find opportunities to improve members' satisfaction. I always say that in business, there are two types of customers. There's the customers that come across the counter or come into your business to buy stuff from you, and you have to make sure you're relevant to them. But you also have to be relevant to your internal customers, which are your employees, and making sure you're doing everything you can to keep them satisfied. Improving openness at club meetings might be one of the things that comes out of surveys such as How Are Your Ratings? And using the Lions Learning Center on the lionsclubs.org website to get resources that will help you develop and execute action plans, or reaching out to your global membership team members, global leadership team members, or your zone or region chair. We also confirm that people joined Lions to serve. So we have to continue to emphasize the importance of service and make sure that it's central and focused on everything that we say and do. How Are Your Ratings are for those internal customers, and the community needs assessment is the survey that we would use on the other side of our customers. So make sure that we use that tool to make sure that we are doing what our customers need and the people in our community need from us. So I encourage zone chairs and district GMT and GLT coordinators to read the assessments done by clubs within their areas. It's another way to identify additional training needs where new clubs could be formed. And then let's continue to promote the Club Quality Initiative, formerly known as CEP, because it uses those two assessment tools and really spends a lot of time discussing action plans and how to create effective action plans to really improve and strengthen your club. The Club Quality Initiative is not just for clubs that are in trouble. In fact, the chance of success is probably greater in clubs that are already doing well, because they already have that culture of wanting to be better. So we want to encourage the use of it with those gold clubs as well. And continue to focus on extension efforts in higher population areas and work on attracting more younger members, more family-friendly clubs, clubs that involve an opportunity to network and interact with others. And we need to look at what our most successful clubs within our district do differently that can make them more, that we can adapt and use those resources to help those clubs that are a little more challenged. I know there's been a lot of information, a lot of statistics and so on, and we haven't had a great opportunity for a lot of interaction, but I would like to just open the floor for just a couple of minutes if there's any comments or questions that you might have about any of the statistics. And I don't know, Tim, is there anybody on the that have any questions out there?
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Well, if there are no further questions or comments that you would like to discuss about any of the survey results that we talked about, we'll wrap up. I would like to invite you on Sunday, April 3rd at 7:30 p.m. We're doing another webinar on more service equals more hands, and about how important it is to conduct service projects in order to become more attractive to people in your community, which ties in with a lot of the things we talked about tonight. So the registration link will be coming out in a short period of time. Before you all sign out, I would encourage you to grab the handout in your handout pane in the control panel. There's a handout which has a couple of links on it to the full presentation that you might find very useful. So you can find that just at the bottom right of your control panel under the handouts tab. I'd like to thank Dave for all the hard work he's done with tweaking and adapting the North American data and turning it into an A12 presentation that can really drive home some results. And as always, I'd like to thank our IT chairperson, Tim, who sits lurking behind the scenes, and he helps people with their audio and technical difficulties they might be having, and answering any little questions that might occur throughout the webinar. So I'd like to thank Dave, or thank Tim, for that. So if there's no further questions or comments, I'd like to sign off for this evening and invite you again on April 3rd to our next and final webinar for the 2015-2016 year. Have a great night.